So today I thought we'd do something a little different. All my stuff is running pretty good, thank God. Um, but I'm still always kind of searching the feeds online to see what they might have available. Always looking for a parts truck, and these Fords, I've gotten pretty used to them. I've had the white 97 for over 10 years and about 100,000 miles now. Just turned 295,000 miles today on the way home from work. So I'm pretty happy with that truck. And that era of trucks, the first generation of the modular engine vehicles, 97 through about 2003 on the trucks, obviously before they came out with those three valves. You don't want anything to do with those. But the first generation of the modulars are pretty robust. They've got some issues. Sometimes you can have, obviously, if you're not careful with spark plugs, you blow one of those out of the head, but that can be helicoiled and taken care of, so that's not a big deal. Um, Otherwise, they run well. They don't have a whole lot of power. They don't have a whole lot of torque. They're kind of a high windy motor compared to a big stump puller, but I mean it does pretty well for what it is. And pushing 300,000 on mine with decent maintenance, it's still running fine. So I thought today I'd walk you through some of the stuff that's online right now available at Copart for because that's basically who I deal with. They're certainly not a sponsor of this channel, but it's who I've bought all my stuff from. And just give you some idea of what the thought process that I use if I'm looking for one of these vehicles. Um, Things that I would try to avoid or things that would catch my eye. So I just did a search, as you can see, for F-150 97 to 2003. Nothing too complex about that. And this is all of the vehicles that are available online right now. What do we got? 556 entries at this point. So the first thing I like to look for is the mileage. When it starts pushing 200, I want to know the history. I really like the truck that I have. I knew that truck had been well maintained before I got it when it had 195,000 on it, and I've gotten another 100 out of it. So you start, to me, if I start getting up to around the 200,000 mile range, I really want to consider what the maintenance history might be. And if I can find something like the one that I have, the little Expedition that I got for my daughter, that's an '03. It had about 125,000 miles on it. And we inspected it, and mechanically it ran well. It was a donated vehicle, so that was no issue there. I thought that was pretty good. If you can find one with an honest under 150,000 on it, as long as you've changed the oil pretty much, it's most likely going to be in pretty good shape from a mechanical standpoint as far as those engines and transmissions go. There's not a lot of grenades, let's say, waiting at that mileage level on these trucks, even if they've been rudimentary maintenance has been done. So let's just scroll through some of these. Nothing too interesting here. Well, here's one. 120,000, 2002. Interesting. Let's take a look at it. All right. So this one's obviously been hit real hard. It's too bad because it does, it's clean. And looking at this picture here, this side's really nice. So if you're looking for the driver's side on this vehicle, and of course they're going to focus on that. They're not going to give you, I doubt we'll get a square on shot of this damage, but it looks like she got punched in the passenger side really hard. But okay, here is something that I look for. These vehicles, especially the ones with leather, you will see after about 170 to 200,000 miles, the driver's seat is going to be falling apart most of the time. The leather ones. Occasionally, I've seen cloth interiors that have lasted apparently much, much longer than that without collapsing, but the leather tends to crack on this bolster where you slide out of the truck. That's a telltale. If you're seeing something that says it's got 80,000 miles on it and the seat is destroyed as if a bear ate it, they may have switched the dash. Because one of the little flaws in these trucks is when they went to, and let's see, okay, When they went to this digital dash, which I think was in 1998, I believe this number is contained in the dashboard itself in this module. So if you're wandering around the pull-apart yard and you just bring your 12-volt jumper to it and you apply power to the battery cable and you open the door, this number probably pops up. And if you see it's 100,000 miles less than what your truck is, you grab this piece for a couple of bucks, stick it in your truck, and you can fake, commit odometer fraud, but you might be able to sell the thing for more money. So especially a truck with leather, the seats are a dead giveaway as to the mileage of the thing. What brought that to mind is a week or two ago I was searching just excursions because I love those big things, and I found one that claimed it only had 88,000 miles on it, and it looked pretty good in the pictures. Like, wow, that's pretty good. So I pulled it up, and both seats, not just the drivers, but both seats were absolutely destroyed. The whole side was blown out on both sides. It was just ruined. And to me, that was a red flag. It may have been honest, but I've never seen an honest to God 80,000 mile truck with seats in the condition that that thing was. Now, maybe somebody stole the good seats out of it and took them and put them in their vehicle before and then swapped them for something, but that was a dead giveaway. That is like, I don't want to touch this thing without a serious inspection because something's not right. Keep an eye on the quality of these seats. These bolsters, especially on the leather ones, they just don't last after about 160, 180,000 miles. So that's a good thing. If you match your odometer reading to the quality of the interior when you're looking at these things online, that can help you get an idea of what you're looking at. Another thing that the Ford's kind of nice, let's see if this one does it. Oh, it does. This sticker, they'll usually take a picture of this because that's the easiest way for them to get the VIN. The axle code for Fords, this is a real easy way to know what gears it's got, first of all, and whether it's a limited slip or not. The axle, this one's a 1.9 code, which I believe is going to be a 355 gear ratio and open differential. Generally, if your first digit of this code is a letter, like an H9, that's going to indicate it's a limited slip. The 19 or the H9, I believe, are 355s, just like my truck. There's a couple of other ones. If you see like the junker that I bought, it's actually, I don't remember what exactly it was. It might have been an H7 or something, but it was the 373 gear ratio posi from the factory. But somebody had switched out both axles at some point and it actually had 355s in it, which was good because I was able to use the rear end when I rebuilt mine. But there's a couple. Let's take a look at a few more here, see what else we can find that might be interesting. 300,000. Wow. Let's just take a look at this one because this is about, it looks pretty clean. Fuzzy headlights. Punched in the driver's door. That's too bad. See, this is an example where, let's see if we get the high def picture here. You can see that seat. That's a 300,000 mile cloth seat. The cloth seats last better than the leather. You can also see the wear on the dash or on the armrest and that door, the door pull being pulled out like that. You can see that let's go to view all photos so I can do something else here. You see the damage in here. This is all crummy. You see this seat's all bashed over, and that's probably a function of the fact that it got punched in that side. And maybe this crack back here on the steering column is a function of that hit, but that's just kind of weird. But you can kind of see the seat's worn here. The armrest here, that could be from the accident, but this is a good indication. That's at that 300,000 miles. That's most likely reasonable. That's real on this. Yeah, the back seats aren't too bad. Nothing too special there. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Again, if you're looking for a parts truck, This probably wouldn't be too, hey, it runs. Look at that. So, you know, this would probably not be too bad as far as if you're looking for a parts truck, especially if you need passenger side parts or even maybe a bed. This wouldn't be too terrible. But 300,000 miles, depending on whether that engine's been maintained terribly well, you know, that you're taking some risk there. Let's keep scrolling. Okay, what do we got here? 138,000, 2002. That's a pretty good looking truck. Doesn't look too bad. Mechanical. Well, that's an issue. You got to be real careful. Engine start program and mechanical damage to me says the transmission doesn't work at a minimum. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. These trucks and their sister vehicles, the Expeditions, you really don't, and the Lincoln Navigators and things like that, you just don't want one that's rusty. The frames on these can go so bad. Even if they were kind of well maintained, being a northern vehicle, you do not want one that's lived its whole life in the salt. I would avoid northern trucks if I could. If I could, I knew the vehicle that I was buying for my daughter was from Illinois, and I took that risk, and it worked out. I made it work, but it was it was rough. It was a lot rougher than I had hoped. So, all right, nothing too interesting here. Well, there we go. Click, darn you. All right, let's see what else we got. 146,000, California. Let's see what we got. Ooh, it's got the Harley Davidson wheels on it. It is a Harley Davidson. Look at that. So this one, that's interesting because that may have a supercharged engine in it. And it does. So that's a real Harley Davidson truck. It's got a little bit of a bid on it, but how many miles? 146. Not too bad. But she took a hard hit. Looks like she slid her into a pole. I wouldn't buy that just because I'm not a body man and I don't have the ability to do that to make that reasonable. Let's look at these seats. They always take it from the passenger side because the driver's side is always the worst. But this doesn't look too bad. You can kind of see the corner of that seat, and normally that's where it would fall apart, is sliding out that side over there. So this truck, it's too bad. This was unfortunate because this was a pretty nice vehicle when it got wrecked. Let's check out the VIN if it's on there. Oh, they didn't take a picture. Oh, the door doesn't open because it's smashed. So they couldn't get a picture of the actual axle code. All right, let's back up a little bit. See if there's anything else interesting. Another one with 300,000 from Georgia. Yeah, that one looks typical 300,000. See, the cloth seats tend to last a lot better than the leather on these vehicles, so they're a little bit less of a giveaway for the mileage if it's got cloth seats. Two-wheel drive, you don't see any solenoids over here. Everything else looks pretty good, although it is missing the cover for the engine. Nothing too special there. Let's see, what else do we have? $1997 with 84,000 miles on it in Maryland. This could be interesting. What in the world do we have here? Look at that. This one got wrecked when somebody was moving with it. Interesting here, it's a short cab, maybe a long box. A little bit of graffiti. Dents and scratches. Looks like somebody flattened it. All 3 out of the 4 tires are flat. That's interesting. This rust is kind of weird. That's strange. pretty clean inside. Just she's not a high option truck, but that mileage may be reasonable on this one. That's not too bad. Yeah, this would concern me a little bit. Granted, it's a 6-cylinder, but I don't like it when I see missing covers. That tells me it may not have been maintained terribly well. And the 97s having the mechanical odometer, they're a little bit harder to fiddle around with because you got to find another 97 to be able to do it. Axle H9, limited slip 355. Not a bad little axle, though most likely drum brakes. So that's an interesting one. And these zeros for the mileage, the digital odometers in these dash panels had a tendency to not work or work very infrequently after a period of time. My son's black one, that one would come and go after a certain period. You just it either sometimes it worked, sometimes it wouldn't. So that's most likely why these are all zeros, because that little LED dash isn't working anymore. Let's look at this 2001 Texas. It might be pretty good. Nothing too out of the ordinary. It's HD. That door panel's pretty whooped. This is pretty whooped. So 160,000, you're starting to see some wear and tear on the interior. You can also see rusty floor, so that's interesting. I don't know what that means, whether they just were very, very sloppy and tended to spill a lot, or it may have some other issues in the past. Another H9, 355 limited slip. Not a bad rear end. And again, this one being a 2001, possibility that it's disc brake in the back like my 03 Junker is. So that's probably not a bad little truck. Let's see. So far, I haven't really found any that I would consider bidding on, to be honest. Nothing too impressive. 2003, 130,000, but Peoria, Illinois. Not going to touch it. And it's an Illinois title, so it's rusty. Forget it. Just don't. Same thing. I won't even consider it. Texas, 162. Hard hit in the front. Too bad. Good Lord. 489. I thought I was doing good where I'm almost getting to 300. Let's take a look at this thing in Waco. My goodness. A little bit of damage in the front. Hood's peeling. That's got the aluminum hood. These did have two options, aluminum or steel, and whether it had which hood it has depends on what prop hood support cylinders you need, pistons you need. So you got to make sure you know that. That's pretty wild. Yeah. Look at that. 400,000 miles. This one's had a little bit of a rough life at some point. Nothing too interesting yet. Let's check the interior. Yeah, you can see the armrest completely boiled up. These cloth seats, though, I have to give Ford credit. The cloth seats were obviously the better option compared to the leather, because even at 400,000 miles or whatever this thing was, that driver's seat, you can see where it looks flat. It's kind of rolled over there at the edge. But those cloth seats live a lot better. They last a lot better than the leather did. The rear seats on these were hardly ever used because they were so small for most of these trucks. Look at that, $489. Oh, full tank of gas. Man, save you $50 on that one. A little bit of damage. Says it's a run and drive with a good clean title. And looking at it, that's an H9. So another 355 limited slip, 5.4 V8. This again a good example of, with proper maintenance, you can get some good mileage out of these. I don't think it says if it was donated or not. A lot of these older ones like this, if somebody's parents pass away and they just want to get rid of the vehicle because they don't really have any use for it, and they'll donate it. You'll see some like that with clean titles. That's how I think we ended up getting our Expedition. Let's see what else we got down here. If there's anything, let's see. Miami, 104,000, 97. Let's take a look. That's low mileage. Now, being in Miami, it's been out in the sun a lot. You can see there's no paint left on the hood or the roof, so that could be problematic. Fairly straight. 6-cylinder with a manual. Okay. But seat is pretty darn good. Door is getting kind of warped there over there, though, so she needs a bit of reconditioning. Yeah, 6-cylinder. 104,000. That's most likely legitimate. A little bed liner in it. And a 1.9, so this is an open 355. Yeah. Not a bad little truck. It might be, this could be a decent one to if you were refurbishing something, if it runs and drives. Although it doesn't say that it does, it says enhanced, so something's wrong with it. Front end and mechanical, I wouldn't touch it. If somebody gave it to me, maybe it'd be worth it, but the value of this truck is so minimal, and with a 6-cylinder manual, even at only 100,000 miles, if you got to put a transmission in it, you've doubled, you've totaled the value of the truck. So that's not worth it. Obviously, if you're doing any of this, you really should never, ever, ever buy anything without getting it inspected by someone who knows what they're doing. If you can't personally get to the lot and look at the thing and see if it's really what it says it is, dig into it, bring your jump box, make sure you try to start it or anything like that. You really should consider paying someone to go look at it for you and get your report, because it's not hard to get burned on these things if you don't take the time to go look at it. Because, Copart's in the business to sell cars, and they're going to tell you the information as best they can, but sometimes, they don't tell you everything that might be obvious if you got somebody who knew what they were looking at. Like, let's see, it's 335,000. That's a hard hit. Let's see the interior here. Yeah. You can see how that bolster is kind of flat. It just falls off right here. That's just how they wear out. The cloth seats really do last better than the leather in this case. Another one that's missing its cap over the top here. Yeah, I wouldn't consider that unless I was just looking for parts. And it was really cheap. What in the world? 2003 with 34,000 miles on it. Okay, we got to look at that. It's raining or snowing. Been hitting hard in the back. You can see that fender all punched out. Snow. What kind of tires are these? Dayton Timberlines. If it's got 4 matching tires on it, well, at least they did that, but that's not really a tip-top brand. It's rare, but I like seeing, Goodyears at a minimum, maybe Continentals, Michelin, some really good name, Bridgestone, Firestone, stuff like that. And Dayton, I think, is a Firestone bottom kind of tier brand. So if there's 4 match tires in the car that I'm looking for, then that I think is a good sign. If it's just 3 random different off brands and a bald spare. That gives you an idea of how well it might have been treated in the past. Again, looking, look at that seat. I mean, you can see that seat's in good shape. That interior is in excellent shape. This may be a legitimate mileage on this truck. That is impressive. Uh, this is pretty darn clean. Now, again, unless I could absolutely get under this truck and smack it with a hammer or something to see how much rust is going to fall off of it, given that it's up in Pittsburgh, I would still never bid on this truck without, even with that looking like potentially legitimate miles, there's no way I'd bid on that truck without being able to inspect it. That's a 27, so that's a maybe like a 320 or I don't remember what actual number that is, but that's an open rear end. But yeah, because that may be right given the condition of the interior and how clean it is, and it is a run and drive, but uh, these things can be so rusty, even depending just how it was treated, depending on how bad it is. Another thing that I like to look for when I'm trying to do this, and you really can't do it unless you inspect it, is does it have a spare tire? If the vehicle comes with a spare tire and it's in good shape, that means at least it wasn't stripped before it was sold. The last couple of things I've seen, a lot of the junk that I see that's true junk, there's no spare tire at all. And to me, that indicates that it may have been, somebody just didn't care and they gave it away, or it, just was trash and they bought 3.5 tires for it or whatever the last time it needed it and used a spare. Or it's a good sign to me if you see a spare still attached to one of these trucks in the yard, in the junkyard. Flood vehicle, never really a fan unless I know the history of it. Here's one at my local yard, 112,000, clear title, interesting. Donated. Oh, okay. Steel wheels. Let's see the interior. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. 6-cylinder manual, but that seat, you can see that the bolster is still kind of up. It's a little flatter than it should be, but the door's not all ruined. What you don't see, though, is they've got the center console flipped up. So that center console, hell, the cover could be torn off or it could be completely fallen apart. But it's, first glance, it's not terrible. See, that's that cover that's supposed to be there on the engines, the beauty cover on the V8s. So that's not bad. That might be interesting. It'd be definitely worth a look, because if it's truly a Louisiana truck, you can always pull a history on it and see if it's ever lived anywhere else. But if it's a Louisiana truck, that's probably not going to be too rusty. You can see this windshield wiper here. That's common on these. That's just flat black paint from the factory, and they just do that. They kind of crap out and rust. So that wouldn't be too concerning from a rust perspective to me, but I'd want to look at the rest of the truck. All right. Well, that's been a little bit of my process for how I look at these things, and what some of the things that you might consider looking at if you're considering pulling one of these things out of a salvage yard, or even if you're looking to buy one used, person to person. It's always worth doing an inspection. These engines aren't really that bad. They're not terribly difficult to maintain. The 5.4s are a little more difficult than the 4.6s just because of the way it's stuffed into there. The 4.6 is a shorter engine, so it's easier to change the spark plugs and stuff. But otherwise, again, I've had very good luck with mine, pushing close to 300,000 miles. You can see a couple of these examples that are still running and driving at almost 500,000. So with the right care, these can last a long time and they can be good trucks. But obviously, with any auction product, anything, you must do yourself the favor and get the thing inspected. If you can't do it, pay somebody $100 or $200 to save you the hassle of throwing a pile of money at something that ends up being a lemon or a turd. You really don't want that at all. So Anyway, if you like this style of video, I may start doing these depending on what we got. I don't have a lot of expertise in other kinds of cars. I kind of like these Fords, but these rules go for expeditions as well. And even excursions at this same age. Very similar engines, very similar interiors. So anyway, hope you all have a good day. Take care.